Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Elaine Stewart. I have been working within the M3 industry, doing consulting, doing PM work since quite some time, more than I want to acknowledge, along with, to be honest, nearly all of the Vince colleagues. I think there's 80 of us. And real quickly, Vince was started by M3 consultants who wanted to make M3 better. So we have 200, 210, 220 customers globally, and we are helping them transform their M3 experience. I think I was quite surprised to see we have around 18,000 workflows existing right now in the platform, and last year they were ran a total of 15 million times. So it's a really exciting time to be part of Vince. I'm responsible here in the US and I live just outside of Chicago, and today I'm joined by Scott Slusher. Scott, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Scott Slusher. I'm the other half of Vince USA. Vince, of course, is a Scandinavian company, and we're fairly new to the U.S. market, but Elaine and I both have worked in M3 for quite some time. My background with M3 is as an M3 product owner for a company that is currently one of our Vince clients, and that's Otter Products. But over the past year and a half, I've been supporting Elaine and Vince here in the USA, doing everything from webinars and demos such as this to working with customers on proof of concepts to see how they could use the tool, also doing training and customer support. So that's basically my role here. And so today I'll be demoing the product a little bit more for you so you can get a sense of what you might be getting yourselves into here with this trial.
Thank you. So just wanted to cover really our goal for this session. As Scott said, we're looking to show you the product, but the reason we're trying to do that is to really generate some excitement around, even more so around your M3 journey and how you can be more efficient in M3 and get more from that investment that you've made. I understand there's quite a lot of customers here at different stages of their M3 journey. And M3 or Vince is definitely an application that can be really a life changer for each of those phases, whether you've just started your M3 journey, you're doing an upgrade, or you've been live for some time. So we'll go through and talk about some of the benefits of using Vince and spend the majority of the time where you can see live how we can work with your master data. And we'll only touch I think on the items today, but obviously this is an application that could be used for any of your master data as long as it has APIs, the Infor APIs, and we'll also look at how you can work in a smarter way with your transactions. After this, we will then touch on what is all entailed in the trial, what that looks like, what's expected from you, how we'll walk with you through that whole experience. So why do we have a product? Why does Vince exist? What are the products? What's it about? And then who is it for? So Vince actually has 3 different products, 3 different applications mainly that were created 15 years ago and seem to be even more popular now than they were when they first started out. We're going to focus on the application called Vince Excel today, where you'll be able to see how to work with your M3 data through the Infor APIs. Who is it for, you might be asking, and I would like to just say it's for everyone. It's really a company product, and we will try and focus on 2 groups. So the first group will be the IT of you on the call today, whether you're an IT analyst, administrator, management. That'll be one group. And then the other group will be the business users. What are the business users going to get out of this and how will it help them? If we look, first of all, really some of the benefits that we see, we're going to touch on the problems that we hear from other customers. Some of them might match where you are. But one of the biggest questions that we hear, concerns we hear, are customers feeling that they don't have a quick enough way to manage their data, whether that's making updates to existing data or creating new data. Working through all of the screens, all of the programs, they're just looking for a faster way to do that. And that is something that you're going to see here. You're going to see the benefit of being able to work in Excel and the ability to bring data from multiple APIs into Excel and be able to make updates and push it back into M3. So you're working with live data. You'll be able to see these changes happening as Scott goes through the demonstration. And why is that important? Well, obviously, we want to keep our data up to date, as accurate as possible. And we see people right now, it could be to do with tariffs. So people are very focused on making sure that they have the right costs, they're changing prices. There's a lot of updates to the supplier information. So that's something we've been working on a lot recently. Or it could be changing your master data, your items, any of the parameters there, whether it's item facility, item warehouse, or the item master. And really, we want the end users, what you're going to see is them having the ability to make those changes real time without having to spend the time to perhaps put a ticket in and have the IT department make that update. So that's where we're really hoping that you'll see the efficiencies that could be gained from using a tool that will help speed up that data migration, that data maintenance. Ease of use, that's another comment that we often hear, that some of the existing tools could be a little clunky. And just the time that it takes to go through the multiple panels, learn the screen names, learn the programs that you need to use, that can take a bit of time. And when you see using Vince, you'll have the ability within IT to do some drag and drop, easily daisy chain your APIs together. And you'll also see how easy it is in the IT department and the administrators to have flexible templates. These templates that you can then give to the business is something that you can get quite creative with, whether it's using conditional formatting or formulas or just using terminology that suits your business. Lastly, we see a huge benefit in the end users being able to work closer with IT, because now IT has the control in how they set up the workflows, but the business have now that ability to almost self-serve, whether that is extracting data out of M3, especially if you're looking to do more than 10,000 rows, you'll have an easy opportunity to do that. And you can just respond a lot quicker to some of the changes, some of the problem solving that you're trying to do in your day-to-day. And with that, I will pass it over to Scott so he can show you exactly what this looks like in practice.
What I'm going to show you is an example, first off, on how you can use Vince to do some transactional data. Let me find what I aim to do here. What we're looking at, of course, is Excel, and I'm going to increase the resolution here. But one of the things of many things you can do with Vince is enter orders. And so we've got here an example of how you might be able to enter customer orders. You can extrapolate this to purchase agreements, MOs, things like that, DOs, all those sorts of things. And you can see here I've got this broken down into 3 different orders that may have come that we need to enter into. This is OAS 300, but as you know, I'm sure you start in OAS 275 and go through the process of entering your batch order with your lines and then confirming that order and letting it go all the way into OAS 100 here. And so you can see I've got 3 different orders, each of which have a couple of different lines here. And I've got my item numbers, my order quantity, and the sales price. Now in Vince, what you can do is configure a workflow that will ingest all of this information and also understand where order headers stop and start. In this case, we want one order header for these 3, another order header, There we go. That's on me. There we go. Another order header for these next two lines and another one for these next three. And you can see you could go on and on. If you had a whole bunch of orders you needed to enter, you could do it all in one spreadsheet here. So what we see over here is the Vince Live Excel plugin. So most of the users of Vince would be interfacing with Vince via Excel in this manner. So you log in with your Vince Live add-in here and log into the system, and then find the workflow that you want to work with. In this case, it's going to be our create. Oops, I just saw there. ES create customer orders right here. Workflows can have a design template. Now I've already downloaded it here because I wanted to get the data, pre-selected for you. But what you can do is you can configure very sophisticated Excel spreadsheets and attach them to your workflow so that every time you run it, you can have access to the same information. You see it customized with the column headers here. A lot of times I'll add the field codes as well. So, the facility, warehouse, et cetera, so that you have a much clearer understanding of what information is going where. You also, what's nice about Vince is you have access to the actual API responses from M3. So whether or not the API ran successfully, was it okay? Or did something go wrong with the API call? Were you missing information? Could you not even add the header, or did some of the lines not add? In customer orders, it's pretty generous. It'll add most of things and just stick them in OS 275, of course. But where this is really helpful compared to, for example, using EVS 100, where you're kind of limited to one transaction at a time, is I can go ahead and run, as you can see here, maybe the fidelity is not fantastic, but behind the scenes, this is actually going to go run add batch head, add batch light, and also confirm from OS 275 all in one transaction. So I don't have to go and run my header and then add my lines to it and then confirm and do all that manually and pay attention to the errors that I get at each step. You can take care of it all in one transaction. Also, in this case, we're also going to pull back the OIS 275 response, the batch order number, and also the OIS 100 customer order number, if it makes it all the way to OIS 100. I think it will this time. And then you can then go ahead and view that order in M3 and make sure that it looks correct. So this is what we're going to do here. Let's go ahead and run this. I'm in my demo environment in our Vince Cloud Suite environment, and we go ahead and click the button and let it go off. And it should add the orders. I should see column K start to populate when it actually creates the orders. There we go. In this case, everything worked successfully. Now, what's nice is I can see that all my responses came back okay. I can also see my OIS 275 status, 90 in this case, which is good. That means that it made it all the way to OIS 100. Furthermore, I can see my batch order numbers. You can see 88, 89, and 90. So it did correctly identify where a new order started and where I needed to create a new order header. And then, of course, in this case, it made it all the way to OIS 100. So I get my actual CO numbers as well. So I'm not entirely sure what status they are in OIS 100. Depending on inventories, and we seem to use these item numbers a lot in our demo, so I have a feeling they're over allocated for our purposes. But then you could go and take a look at the order, and you can either go into M3 and look at it, or you can create another workflow, right, to go and check out some information about the orders themselves. So I'll pause here in case anyone has any questions. And also, while I won't pause, I want to point out that we're using Excel tables here, and that allows us to create some nice conditional formatting. So in this case, if it's okay, it's a nice green color. If it's something other than okay, it changes to something like that. So you can put in some nice features here to make it visually very appealing to your end users. I can change colors and things like that. You can even put formulas in here. And I've seen customers use formulas for all kinds of cool purposes. They can do X lookups to other sources of information to give them more context to their output here. You can add validation. Like if you have things like, look, this needs to be one of 3 or 4 values when you're inputting information, like your facility or your warehouse, for example, you can put in the drop-down validations that are looking at other, sources here. Your spreadsheet from here can have multiple tabs in it as well. So if you have supporting data, you can refer to them in those other tabs, and they always get the same information there. Okay, so now I will pause for questions. Fantastic. Now, something that it happens to a lot of people, even if you look, a lot of companies have, integrations that put customer orders into their system automatically, totally understandable. But there are times when you get an order entered and then you need to make an adjustment to it. So I want to pivot to another set of workflows where you can take order numbers, take a look at the information, and maybe make some changes to them. I got 69, 70, and 71 here. I was just looking at this yesterday to make sure it worked. So let's go ahead and let's see. And of course, you can see order 68 here. I'm going to go ahead and do 69, 70, 71. These are the ones I just created today. This is kind of a different look and feel, but what this allows me to do is start with a list of customer order numbers. They don't have to be in sequence. These just happen to be. And I can run a workflow that will tell Vince to go and get information for all of these items, and then put those line informations, including, important to us for this demo, a confirmed delivery date and a sales price, into this tab here. So you can start with this tab of just order numbers, pop them in here, run this workflow we've got here. What this will do is take all these 6 order numbers and go and ask M3 about information about these orders. So it's going to run a couple of different APIs, one to get the order head, because I want some information there, and then also get me all of the line information for these orders as well. And when it's complete, it will populate that CO line info tab for me. It does appear to be taking its sweet time today. So we'll let this run for a second. It may be because I didn't refresh this morning, so I might need to go ahead and do that, unfortunately. So in the meantime, let me take one of these and we'll open up another Excel spreadsheet and start from scratch here. Let's see, VXL Live. Load it into here. And also what you're seeing, I didn't, of course, point it out specifically, but you can order workflows into a group here. So I've got this group of workflows, 5 workflows that all kind of center around the same thing. And let's see, let's retreat a little bit here. You can also get the same information one order at a time. Here we go. So if I had a single order number, I can run a different looking sort of workflow to just get the lines that are associated with this one order number. And then I can click run here and it will run the APIs, but just for that order. So there we go. And I can see I've got 3 line numbers here. I've got currently a confirmed delivery date of 7/17 for this order. And I've got a sales price here of this. Now what I've done is this is kind of based on a proof of concept I was working with a particular customer. And you can see here, I've configured this to tell me that it ran get order head and it ran list line. By the way, this isn't important to the successful operation of the workflow. This is just for us. So you can see there's a little space in here. So kind of indicating that might not actually be needed to run the workflow. All of that stuff is configured in the back end. I just like to have this so I know exactly which APIs I called to get the information I need. So in this case, what I'm going to do, you can see down here, let me minimize this. I've got a update order line sales price and a CODT update, confirmed delivery date update. So we had a customer ask, well, what if I have some orders and you can see they're in this status 22. So they haven't been, invoiced or anything or delivered or et cetera. I can at this point change the sales price on these. Maybe they came in incorrectly, and I can change the confirmed delivery date on these orders. I can do this kind of ad hoc, right? So if I realize, this is actually supposed to be 260.01, and this is supposed to be 273.61 and 288.01, I can make the changes right here in Excel. Go ahead and click my order line sales price, and it will go ahead and make that request. And there you go. You can see the price info was updated. Now, if you're like me, you want verification. So I'm going to go ahead and rerun that export. There we go. For this particular order. And I should see now when it comes back that that sales price has all those ones in it. I did that just so I could quickly make sure it was changed. Now, another adjustment you can make to an order like this is changing that confirmed delivery date. So maybe we realize we need to change that. This, I happen to know this order type. If I were to just change confirmed, it's set to, one delivery per order. So if I change it on one line, it will change all three. So I don't necessarily have to change it for all three in this case, but you might have orders that have, you can package in multiple deliveries. So that could be different for you. So I go ahead and click run here on the confirmed delivery date. And there we go. I can see, and this time it didn't run the update price info because that was this workflow, but it did run this OS 100. Actually, list line's not correct. It's the update line transaction, and my confirmed delivery date did change. There's a table behind the scenes, and I'm glad I have this workflow in here because I want to highlight something interesting that Vince does for you, or that you can take advantage of. This is called Export OORESC by order number. And it occurred to us that with these orders, when you start to change delivery dates, it's putting extra records or kind of almost an audit trail records into this table called OORESC. It's kind of an obscure thing, but we had a client, that was really curious about this to understand how those records get added to that table when you start making these changes. So we created a quick little workflow using Export MI, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but in a Vince way of doing it to get that information. And so you can see here, I had a separate design file here, which is showing me all of the table names for that table here. I can grab that order number, go ahead and put that in here, and then click run. And now it will just give me kind of a table dump of that table, showing what's going on with that table. I can see it's organized by order line here, and I have this sequence number. What this is telling me is this is how the planning date is changing over time. So I have kind of an audit trail of that. Could be very interesting to find out. So it's a good way to kind of get access to some information that isn't necessarily easy to get or easy to change in M3 itself. And again, with this order line info, I'm messing around with one order number, and I meant to show the other one. Let's see if it actually is still running. I did something weird here, so ignore that. But you could understand that you could have a whole list of orders and wholesale make a change to it. So if you had a particular item number, perhaps, that was delayed or not in stock, and you needed to change the confirmed delivery date on any order that contained this item number, you could run a workflow to find all orders in a certain status or lower, right, that hadn't already been shipped. You don't need to worry about those, that are active orders that contain this item. Change the delivery date for every single one of those in a single transaction, and then you're done. And so now we're going to pivot to the actual.
Scott, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So now I can see how quick it is to change dates, or to, number one, get the data, or then change dates or pricing. I know that can make people a little nervous when now I'm seeing this data and I'm making these changes to fields that I might not even be allowed to typically change.
Yeah.
Could you speak to some of the concerns that people might have around that security side?
Of course. Vince layers on top. First of all, Vince layers on top of your existing M3 security. So and I can demonstrate some of this here in our admin console. This is where your Vince administrators will build workflows and manage connections to M3 and manage all of your Vince users. So to start with, let's go to the users here. And we have a whole bunch of crazy users here in our demo environment. Let's find my, I have way too many users here for various purposes. And if I click manage user here, I can see that there's a field here for your M3 user ID. So my M3 user ID in our Vince environment is SCO SLU 17, Scott Slusher 17, that's me. What happens when I run any API from Vince? It will apply this M3 user ID to, technically it's applying it to the header of the REST API call when you call M3. M3 interprets that and will apply all of my permissions to any API that's called. So if I'm not authorized to, let's say, add something to the general ledger, for example, it will M3 will stop me because it is paying attention to this M3 user ID. This is also helpful for any record that gets added, updated, or deleted. I'll have my user ID assigned to that record. So when you go, like if I were to create those orders, which I just did, if I go into M3 and look at them, then I will see that the user ID assigned to that newly created order is SCO SLU 17, not the connection user itself. When you connect from Vince to M3, technically what you're doing is you're building an authorized app and you're attaching a user ID in OS to that. And that needs to have a couple of permissions. It needs to be able to run an API as another user, and a couple different things there. But that user that was created for the authorized app really isn't the one you want to be running your transactions against, because that may have different permissions. And also the audit trail is going to be incorrect, right? It's going to be the integration itself instead of the user calling the integration. I know as someone who used to work and be an M3, administrator, integrations were kind of tricky that way, right? So it's nice that this kind of put together for you. On top of that, Vince layers on a couple of additional security features that I think are quite cool. One is, if we go down here, what you can do is you can assign to, there we go. You can assign to users only the workflows that you want them to see and operate. And you can assign that to them in sort of you can run the workflow, or you can give them access to modify the workflow as well. So you have some flexibility there. I was just working with a client this morning that has an intern for the summer, and they want that intern to have the ability to create workflows, modify any workflows, but they don't want that intern to have access to the production environment. So each connection to M3, you usually have your test, your training, production. I'm not sure what, specific acronym you've got, but those are 3 separate connections, and you can create permissions to each of those connections separately, so that if you have a summer intern that you want them to build workflows, but you don't want them to run them in production at all, you can configure it that way, or you can give someone access to all of your environments, of course. So you can control it that way too. Obviously, it's more important to take advantage of your existing M3 permissions. But this, in my opinion, is a nice thing to do. It like simplifies your users' experience in Excel. They only see the workflows that they're allowed to work on. So there's that. On top of that, the way Vince is configured, it kind of gives you field level control at the workflow level. If we go back to, let's see, this is a good one. Actually, I kind of like the other one. There we go. Nope, one more. I have way too many spreadsheets open, as usual. There we go. Okay, as you'll notice here, like there are a lot more columns available when I am looking at order line information, but I've restricted this workflow to only show me the ones I care about: my confirmed delivery date, my sales price. These are actually not very well named, I apologize, and your status. Also, when I run this order line sales price update, it's only looking at this field to update. There might be other available fields that I could update, but this is the only one that actually will get updated. So that could be pretty important when you're talking about perhaps a item warehouse record. You might want to display dozens of columns, pieces of information about your item warehouse record, but you might want to restrict only to a couple of fields that are available to be updated by the person running the workflow. So this is even a little more secure than M3 out of the box. M3, yes, you can get crazy with your configurations in SES and restrict things that way, but this is a little more convenient in my opinion. So those are kind of like the 3 different layers of security that you can add to your user experience in Vince, that kind of layer right on top of the M3 security. Elaine, do you think that that answered the question to your satisfaction?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
All right. So what I want to do now, unless anyone else has any questions, I can't see the comments or anything like that. So if someone has something in the comments, please maybe Elaine can let me know. What we're looking at now is this is kind of my sandbox. I've been working on a lot of different workflows here. I've got one that's kind of halfway built. That's why I've got my invalid workflow on it here. But you can see that we do all kinds of interesting things with our workflows. Let's take a look at one that we actually just ran here. Maybe this get order line. And it's a fairly simple workflow. We're going to it'll call a couple of different APIs, but I want to show you how you build these in the Vince admin tenant. So let's go look up get order line. And it should pop up here. There we go. Here's my get order line workflow. I can see it has 3 components. And you can also see I last ran it 11 minutes ago. I'll come back to this in a moment because I want to show you the logging that you get in Vince. Say it all excited, the logging. Okay. M3 API. So I have a step here called M3 API. In here, you can see that I am indeed calling get order head and I'm calling list line. This is also telling me that I have an input to the get order head for the order number, get order customer, and this little computer monitor screen indicates that it expects to receive it manually from a little text box here. I can do different things with this. It can come from Excel. That was the other demo I was attempting to show you, where I started with a list of values from Excel that are my input to this. It could be a constant value. This doesn't make sense in this one really, but it can make sense for something like maybe if you're looking at price lists and you only do your transactions in USD, but the API requires a currency. You can just set it to US dollar all the time, or you can set it to from client and make it a default of US dollars. And if it's something else like CAD or whatever, then they can go ahead and change it. So you have some good flexibility there. And you can see there's also this from tag, and there's a couple other things here. From tag means you can actually, this is kind of a security feature, honestly. You can assign a tag value to your users, which would then restrict an input value to whatever that tag value is. For example, if I had salespeople, then I wanted to look at their orders or maybe a responsible value on their suppliers or something like that. I could create a tag that had their M3 user ID in it, or just use their M3 user ID. And then anytime they ran a transaction, you could automatically assign that responsible field to them. Responsible isn't one of the inputs here, but you could kind of get your wheels turning on how you could do that to make sure that if you had instances where you didn't want people, snooping around in areas they shouldn't be in, but you want them like an item, even an item warehouse, maybe you could just restrict people to only see information on a warehouse that they're assigned to. So, and then you can see here how this customer order number is mapped from the output of this to the input of this. And so you can daisy chain multiple APIs together. So for example, in this one, if I wanted to then get some information about the item number, maybe I want to see the name of the item, which isn't something that's in list line, I don't think. I can then go ahead and add another API. In this case, of course, MMS 200, get item basic, add this to it. And now you can see, of course, yes, item number is required input for here. If it's an output from this API, which it is, then I can link these two together. And now I have access to all 123 outputs from get item basic data. So name is likely the one I'd want to add. So this is where you map which fields you want to show, in this case on my get order line, and where you want to put them. So this should look kind of familiar. These are the things that were showing up in my spreadsheet, right? Order number, line number, item number, confirmed delivery date, quantity, requested delivery date. I didn't do a good job of coding my template there. And then here are my two outputs, right? Get order head and list line. If I wanted to now add the item name, I could do it. This is a fairly simple example. I could actually take the name and put it right in here, and it would move everything over. So now when I run this next time, I'll get the item number, but I'll also get the item name. So this is really quite handy, and it really gets super powerful if you have a lot of custom fields especially in items, right? A lot of companies will take advantage of KUGEX fields, as I call them, your customer extension fields, or their the 474 CRS 474 fields, which have batches of additional information. Or if it's a lot controlled item, maybe item attributes. You can connect all these APIs together to view these in a single line. I don't know about everyone on this call, but item attributes and those CMS 474 fields are a nightmare to try to view when you're looking at an item in M3. But in Vince, you can keep connecting all of these APIs together. There are, of course, API support for the 474 fields and the KUGEX fields. Just keep linking them along until you get all of those additional special fields that you want to view. And then, yes, on the other side of it, if you need to add or make changes to those custom fields, you can also do that through a workflow just as easily. So when you get to stuff like that, then in my opinion, the features of Vince really start to become very powerful and useful in this regard. Okay, I'll pause here for a second. What I want to do is show you a cool little feature that we've created in Vince for Export MI. And if you remember, I was talking about this here, this export OOR ESC by order number that gave me kind of, that was in the other, I keep bouncing around to all my spreadsheets here.
There we go. A time check. We've got about 10 minutes left here to cover items and the trial.
Okay. Well, I'll go really quickly here. OOR ESC. Let's take a look at this. And get out of that. I didn't save that workflow. ORESC. There we go. We pull up this workflow, and what I expect to see here in this M3 API is a single API, but it's Export MI. Now, if you've worked with Export MI, it's not you have your 10,000 row limit, typically. You can use indexes to get around that. And you have to build kind of SQL-ish stuff to get information out of it. At Vince, what we did is we created a bunch of what I call pseudo transactions. And they are against all of the tables available in Export MI. So if I was looking for MITMOS, I could create a transaction selecting from MITMOS, and I have at my disposal every single column in the table. So if you've worked with MDB Read, it kind of can serve a similar purpose to MDB Read, but it actually has a few additional features. You can see here, company is kind of a silly example, but I could add ranges, really important for dates sometimes, or statuses or things like that. You can do some really neat searches, custom searches directly against your tables on Export MI. And of course, then you can link multiple tables together. So it gives you a really powerful way to get access to data that the APIs don't necessarily cover, or they don't cover in a way that is convenient for you. Now, I'll fully admit I will frequently go to MDB Read because for two reasons. One, I feel like MDB Read performs better, and also it is not restricted to those 10,000 rows. So if you have a lot of data that you're trying to get out of a workflow, MDB Read might serve a better purpose, but this does have a few features that MDB Read doesn't. Okay, let me get rid of that. So that's what we're doing here. Also, I don't believe there are any APIs available to get information out of this strange little table, OOR ESC. And so you may find that there's just some little strange piece of information that you really want. You can get it out of that. Okay, so what we wanted to do, this happens to me fairly regularly. We wanted to show off some item maintenance here. Let's see, let's go back to here, add another spreadsheet, go to VXL Live, and let's pull up that group of item maintenance. Let's see, item maintenance. In this case, what I've got here is export item by item group. So this is fairly common. You might have everything in a particular item group might need to be updated. Okay, yep. This is something, ignore the name. That's something I was doing for another customer here. And what we can do here is specify a warehouse. There we go. And export some information about an item warehouse record. Also notice this one's better because we can add these little lookups. If you can't remember what your warehouse names are, you can add a lookup here to get a particular warehouse. So there we go. That can be handy to have a little lookup here. Now this is going to get some safety stock and weight information. There we go. And from here, I have all the items in this warehouse. I came back, well, we don't have a ton of items here. You probably have more. But what I can do now is I can update the safety stock and weight information for all of the items in this warehouse here. So I can see I don't have a safety stock here. Let's add that. And let's see if that works. And then run my update on all of these things. And you can see I've got update item basic for my gross weight and update item warehouse for my safety stock. It'll run both APIs. It will run the APIs for every single one of the lines on this spreadsheet, even though I only changed a few. And you can control how Vince does that. You can add filters to say, look, only run on these particular things if it worked. You can also see it said I executed 216. I had 213 successes and I had 3 failures. So that's interesting. There we go. So you can, this is an example I'm happy to show that is telling me why a particular API may have changed. So this is saying there's something wrong with this sales price unit of measure. It's invalid and I'm not going to update this record. So it may indicate, excuse me, and in this one, the buyer does not exist on the warehouse record. It's not what I was attempting to update, but it is kind of handy here. It's showing me, oh, I've got some data perhaps on these records that needs addressing. Maybe the buyer no longer works at M3, and so that needs to be, or for your company. And so that record needs to be solved in a different way before you can update the safety stock, for example, on this. Okay, I think I've used more than my allotted time, as is typical. I will stop sharing and Elaine, and hand it back over to Elaine.
Thanks. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Scott. I hope you were able to see where you might recognize some of the pains, changing line items one by one, rather than being able to do them there in bulk. Even doing that simple export that Scott showed you of the item master, pulling 216 items, particular to the purpose that you're trying to solve, the problem you're trying to solve. That is also very popular to be able to extract your data that way. Hopefully you see the benefit of being able to make those changes, multiple changes, one click, and it's updated straight away with all of the checks and balances that M3 does through the APIs, and it updates into M3. Hopefully you can also see how much easier that could be for an end user to be able to run their processes, streamline their processes without using M3, just to be able to follow along in Excel. And then from the IT or the administrator side, being able to create those workflows really only takes knowing the names or even just the description of the APIs, and that will guide you. It's a very intuitive system to create new workflows. So with that, got a few minutes left here. I will go over what's included as part of the trial. If this is something that we're hoping that you'll be able to take advantage of and start to do these exact same tests, examples that Scott just showed you, but with your own data.
And we've got a lot of questions, Elaine, that I'd like to get to as well. That
Okay.
came up. Works on M3 on-prem and cloud. That is correct. For this trial, we're doing it for cloud customers, but it does work on on-prem provided you are on 13.4. It does need OS, 13.4 plus OS. I think you can do 13.4 without OS. Run transform actions when you return data. Yes, there is an advanced feature to Vince where you can essentially run the M3 APIs as REST APIs or even in code, take the data, transform it, combine it, do some really interesting things to it. Of course, I didn't show that in this demo, but we have some pretty advanced features. The workflows I was showing, the create customer order is one of the painkillers, as we call it. So that one's canned. The other ones I've shown you are basically just some interesting things I've been working on, quite frankly, that I think show off some cool features. But there's stuff that can be built in any environment. And that's my job to show you how to do that. Let's see. Data validation, Christopher, a couple of different ways. When clients ask that question, I would typically direct them to try to handle it in the spreadsheet itself. Text length, like for example, if you have an item description that you're trying to add or modify, of course you only have a certain number of characters. I'd like that to stop before it gets to the REST API call in M3, but unfortunately it doesn't do it. So you can add valid form validation in the Excel spreadsheet. And of course, M3 will fail the API as well, but that's.
So let me go through what is included as part of the trial. We will make that connection, as Scott mentioned, the authorized app there to connect you to your M3 environment, and it could be just your test or your test in prod. That really can be unlimited. You will have the Excel add-in. We'll be able to download all of the APIs that you have in case you've got any additional ones there to the standard M3 ones. You can have as many users as you would like be part of this trial. So we did show you kind of supply chain data and order entry data, but this could be applied to GL data. We quite often are helping with the GL 840 updates. Really any part of M3 that has the API. So you could have users in any area that are having some of these pains be part of the trial. To work to help with these canned questions that you had there and the painkillers is what he showed you. 4 of them will be included. We could add others if that's something that you're interested in. So how do you get up to speed on this? There are 28 very short, quick, fun tutorial videos that you can watch, and it will take you through step by step how to do some of these building of the workflows yourself. But in addition to that, we will offer 4 weekly sessions. It'll be a live session with Slush, and he will work through each of the painkillers. And the plan is that you can do that hand in hand with us, either during the training session or afterwards. They've got some potential dates there of when we'll have those sessions, not starting until the 24th, so that gives us some time to get organized. We will also offer that one-on-one support. So if you say, okay, I love the customer orders, but we are more interested in purchase orders, distribution orders, then that is something that Scott will be able to help you build. And really, we're just looking for you to be able to get hands-on with this, use your own data, use the volume that you are accustomed with, and really get inspired and find new ideas on how you can make the most out of your M3 experience. Data validation.
We're showing fields that are editable in Excel, but not allowed in the workflow. I would color code those in the design template. So the ones that are going to be updated, make them like a, yellow color, and the ones that are not updated, make them gray or something like that. And you can add notes to your design template as well, so that they understand what's going on there. That's probably the combine data from multiple tables. Hopefully those, what I was showing in the APIs did that. And I saw a really interesting question. Oh yeah. Mass data corrections in M3CE if needed. So that's from Jonathan. I'm assuming the context here is that you're on-prem right now, so you have a lot more access to your database, and in cloud, not so much. So it's kind of layered here, right? You definitely cannot just go into the database and make updates, as you know, but M3 does have a ton of APIs that allow you to update information from the APIs, and that's where the workflows connect to those very seamlessly. If it's information that's not in an API, there are a couple other options. They're a little more involved. One is you can create, web services, it would be known as on the on-prem, but IPS services. You can create those, and Vince can connect pretty easily to those, or you can invest in creating an extend API to create an API to update that information. So it does get complicated, but if the API is there, Vince can call it and you can make huge updates all in one button. Like the order and the other, I answered the other one online, but I have another customer who's asked this exact same question. When making updates to orders and other things, you might have a batch job that runs behind the scenes and locks the order, so that if you're trying to make an update to multiple lines at the same time, that second order line has to wait until the batch job is finished on whatever is happening in the order. So if you try to run them too quickly, all the other lines are going to fail on you. So I have a customer that is dealing with that right now. There are options in Vince to code a delay between those calls, but it does require a little bit more of an advanced feature. There's also a really funny API in M3 that you can kind of you tell it to just put random data somewhere and then pull it back out, which essentially delays the call to the next API. In certain cases, you can use something like that to kind of fudge a delay using M3 APIs. I've seen that used as well.
Thank you, Scott. Well, thank you everyone for your time. We're right at the top of the hour. I will reach out to you for the next step in setting up your tenant. That's something that you would like to do and continue with the free 30-day trial. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day, and I will follow up. Take care.